Welcome back. All right, so I've been wanting to do this video since the channel crossed the 290,000 plateau in subscribers. So here we are on a Monday to discuss this. And it's going to be your standard milestone video from THG here. We'll talk about the upcoming season a little bit. So there are a lot of games on the first Saturday, and then there's only 2 games on the Sunday. So there's a game at 4 o'clock and a game at 5:30, and that's my time. Just Pacific time on the board today for this video. I usually post with previews. I talk about Eastern time because that's where a majority of the subscribers are going to be, is in the Eastern time zone in North America. That's why I default to Eastern time. I am in the Pacific time zone. I'm not very far from Vancouver. So Saturday's going to be a busy one, and I wanted to talk about this because it's a question I get a lot. I've talked about it before, so I'll quickly go over it again. First off, there's a game at 10 a.m. between Philadelphia and Ottawa, and then at 1 p.m. there's a game between Florida and the Jets. After this game, there should be time for me to recap this game. Or after this game, during this game, there might be time to recap it, but there should be time to do the recap before this one happens. So with a 3-hour time difference, I love a 3-hour time difference. Usually a game will take about 2 hours and 40 minutes, maybe 2 hours and 45 from that posted time. So the actual puck drop is after that posted time. So the actual game time is shorter than that. But for me and for what I do, usually about 20 minutes before that next game gets started, the one's done. So I could do a recap of that. Now I know that when I do recaps of early season matinee games, those recaps are not going to get a lot of views. I'm aware of that. And it's a balancing act that I have and I've tried to keep going between what I know could work. So like if I did a list video, the list video is going to get more views than both of these recaps combined. But, I think it's important that I'm covering all the teams. And so my intention is to do 2 different videos here. It also means less time for the recap at the end of the night, where I've got all these other games. So there are 14 games on that first Saturday. 12 of them are evening games. There are 6 starting at 4 o'clock my time. So how do I watch 6 games? Talked about this before, and I'll explain it again because I feel like there are people who get a little bit thrown off by what I'm saying. So my nice TELUS remote here. There you go. Fancy TELUS remote. We've got approximately 6 of these currently. I bought a couple extra ones because we keep losing them here and there. So I'm like, all right, we'll just have extras. So if somebody loses one, whatever, we'll find it in a couch later. But the previous button right here, that is my best friend during the season. I'm hitting that all the time. Because during a game, if the play's at center ice and there's not much going on, if it's going to commercial, if they're interviewing between the benches, whatever's going on, if it's a really busy night like this, where we're going to have Nashville, Boston, Rangers, Columbus, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Chicago, Montreal, Calgary, Pittsburgh, and then Minnesota, Toronto, I'm going to have that previous button there because I'll have all 5 of the other games that are going on at that time loaded in the remote as previous channels I've been on. So I can easily scroll back and forth between 6 different games. And when they're all started at the same time, they'll normally go to breaks at around the same time, and then they have their intermission at the same time. So for me, if I'm thinking, all right, so I'm going to plan what I'm going to have for dinner and what I'm going to eat, very often on a Saturday night, it isn't until late. It's usually around 7:30 that I'll say, all right, that's when I can actually have something to eat because I'm too busy following all these games. All the food gets cold or it gets thrown out. So there's that. But once that's 4:30 game starts, which is the 7th game, well, now you got a problem, right? Not necessarily. Now, I've got Sportsnet Plus, so I can put the Buffalo Islanders game on Sportsnet Plus, and then at 5 o'clock, I can put on the Seattle-St. Louis game. And that's the limit. The limit for me is 2 games on Sportsnet Plus on my computer, while I've got 6 on the TV, because A, it's very difficult to keep up with more than that, and B, my computer, my internet connection, is not strong enough for me to stream 3 games at the same time. It won't do it. It's going to start skipping, and so I'm going to end up behind on a game or 2, and the app's going to be spoiling it for me, and it becomes a lot. So 8 is kind of the max. So these 6 games will all come to an end, and then you've got 3 games at 7 o'clock, and of course, California has a game at 7:30, which means that'll probably go to a shootout between the Canes and the Kings. I would not be surprised. I'd be kind of surprised if we don't at least need overtime that first night, because the regular season's back. And it's kind of become a meme at this point where I'm like, yeah, so this one went to overtime because it's a California game. It starts at 7:30. It has to. Last year's San Jose games, quite common San Jose games. Feels like Anaheim and LA games as well went to overtime a lot. Now, whether they went to overtime more than other teams, no idea. But it felt like it because, again, for me, I want to get the recap done. I want to do the power rankings. And then I can turn in for the night. So when this game ends up going to overtime, going to a shootout, if it's a long shootout, well, now it's delaying everything 20 minutes. So it's meaning instead of me going to bed at, say, midnight or 12:30, well, now we're up to maybe 1 a.m. So it could be a bit of a slog, but I get through it, and then I do the recap video. My fear is always that something's going to go wrong with the microphone when I'm making the really long videos like that. So I always check the videos before they upload, but keep in mind that when it's a longer video, YouTube, it takes a while, and I think it's while it's doing its checks that the audio doesn't necessarily work if you're watching it on your phone using the app. I have not had that problem ever on my laptop computer, but yes, it absolutely does have that problem. And it doesn't seem to affect some other channels, and I remember I mentioned it to my contact at YouTube, and she kind of reacted with it does what? So maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe it's just my videos upload and it goes, we're going to take off the audio for the first 10 minutes because what's life without chaos? So, because then, of course, there's all the comments of no audio. And I'm like, it's there because I check every single video. That's why I start with welcome back. Here's the other thing, too. I've always had like a phrase that I use at the start of videos. And I've settled on morning all when it's the first video of the day and welcome back when it's the others. Because then when I'm re-watching before I upload, all I have to hear is welcome back. And as soon as I hear welcome back, I'm like, all right, cool. Because I don't like listening to my own voice. I know that seems odd, doesn't it? But I don't. And so I just hear welcome back. I'm like, all right, that's enough of that nasally voice for today. That video works. So the channel itself evolved over time. The channel itself, April 15th of 2015 was the first hockey video on this channel. April 23rd was the next hockey video, and then October 5th after that. It wasn't until spring of 2016 when I started to really lean into hockey and realize that there was some potential there, that there was a market that wasn't necessarily being served. The videos I was putting up there were getting pretty good hits considering I didn't have subscribers and I was talking about things that I didn't see other channels talking about either. So April 2016 is when things really boosted and the channel really started to grow. I met my wife in person in September of 2016, but it was April of 2016 where her and I started talking on the internet. We met online. There's a video on the Entertainment Guy of how we met. And so, yeah, it started there, and I don't know that it's a coincidence that my videos suddenly had traction and form, and the channel started to grow at the same time I was talking to her. It definitely improved my mood. It definitely made me feel better about life and things in general. So, not a coincidence, I don't think. And so, yeah, that's something that I felt like, I should throw out there because I don't know how much of this was planned for me to become a YouTuber. I think it was just something I fell into as a hobby. That's always kind of the advice I give people. Just treat it like it's a hobby. It's a hobby. You're making a video, you upload it. Make sure you like the content you're putting up there. Now, I wanted to mention, too, with meetups, we'll probably have one on Saturday yet again because the weather's supposed to be good this weekend. And then, of course, next weekend, well, I'm not going to be having one next Saturday where there's 14 games on. It's not going to happen. 14 games means no. And that's one thing that maybe during this season I'll try to find a spot. So mentioning Sunday where there are 2 games on, there is the possibility that I may look at a Sunday during the season where it's not very busy and say, you know what, I think I'll get together and have a meetup for that Sunday, and then we can play some street hockey. And it's street hockey because if I made it ice hockey, nobody'd play. We'd probably have like 3 guys. That's it. Like, most of the guys who come out to play for this are not athletic. They're not people who are, in the gym. They're not people who played professional hockey or played amateur hockey. These are not people who, went out every day and skated 5 miles. They're just normal people like myself who are hockey fans and want to get together and play some street hockey. And it's been fun playing street hockey with people who've never played it. And just saying, just go out there, just don't worry about it, because I'll always get the, I don't want to embarrass myself, I've never played it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. Just go out there, act like you've done it a million times. When you screw something up, just kind of whatever, and nobody's going to care. We don't keep track of score if we only have two teams. If we have more than two teams, we keep track of score because you have to rotate the teams off. But other than that, yeah, we don't keep score. There have been times where we'll play a single game that goes on for hours, and we just don't keep score. We might trade players around if it feels like it's lopsided, but we're not there with the idea of you must win, you must win. It's about building that community. Something that I learned pretty early on was that there was definitely a community you could build with this. And so it was in 2018, after Humboldt, that I really started to lean into that, creating that community. And it's worked out pretty well. It's been great. I've definitely made friends through it. I know there's guys who come out that've made friends with one another, so it's fine. And are we great players? No. Who cares? Like, it's one of those things where it's not important. Like, oh, that slap shot sucked. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Fine. But again, it's for normal everyday guys to go out and play, and it's an enjoyable experience to have for me anyways. I played street hockey a lot growing up. It's something that it feels like isn't as common now as it was when I was a kid, so I'm fine with kind of bringing it back. Hopefully some of the guys who come out and play are like, you know what, I'm going to get myself a couple of street nets and start playing, and we'll start playing amongst ourselves. That'd be great. It'd be sort of like I'm Tyler Durden and it's Fight Club, but it's street hockey and nobody gets hurt. The most boring version of Fight Club you can ever imagine. But yeah, that's why we do street hockey. We've also done floor hockey, the indoors as well. But I mean, outdoor hockey at a public park, it works. It works really well. And I know those videos won't get views, just like the preview videos. When I'm doing preview videos every day, I'm well aware that those don't do quite as well as anything else on the channel. But there are people who like to guess who's going to win and keep track of their record of how they've guessed who's going to win each game. And so I keep the previews going because, I mean, while it's fewer people that watch that, there's a very dedicated portion of the audience that does watch that material. So it's going to get very, very busy, and it does mean that there's other things that I normally, before I had the channel, I'd be watching. Like at this point in the year, normally I am just absolutely up to my eyeballs in National Football League games and who's winning and who's losing. And outside of the obvious ridiculousness in the National Football League right now, Taylor Swift, which I've not done a video about on the Entertainment Guy channel. I may change that today. Not about Taylor, no, just NFL stuff and things of that nature. Also, there's some big wrestling news that I didn't do a video on last night, but I could today. And maybe I'll do both of them together. Who knows? Sure, wrestling and football, why not? But I learned early on, I can't post that on this channel, or people are like, this isn't hockey, I'm going to unsubscribe. So people can be quite touchy about what content you put on which channel. And as I've mentioned before, other YouTubers will have like a second channel that dies. They get subscribers, and then they get bored of it, and it just dies. That will never happen with the secondary channel I have here. There's videos on there with the kids from when we told them the first time we were taking them to Disneyland and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so the meetup this week's probably going to be the last one until, at least locally, probably until May. But again, I'm going to look at the schedule throughout the season and make sure that people know if we're going to have something, because honestly, I think it's fun to have those during the season as well. The only other meetup that might be possible is if we do go to California. There's a game in California right before the All-Star break that might be kind of fun, because if we're going to do trips, and I've talked about this before, I'll throw this in again here. If we're going to do some kind of a trip with the kids, it has to be around the All-Star break. At least for me, it has to be around the All-Star break. There are times Yvonne takes the kids on little holidays and trips that I just don't go on because I have to be here. I have to report on what's going on, and I can't go. So that's a trade-off. But yeah, I think it's important too to have that time. So debating about whether or not we're going to be able to do that this coming All-Star break like we did last year. Might be our annual trip. And then, of course, we have our annual trip that we do to Las Vegas. That's in August. But at any rate, it's been an exciting trip to this point. I've moved 3 times since the channel started, so there's that. But hopefully, we're firmly grounded here because I think it's a perfect setup. The set is not an actual set, so there's always going to be challenges with the fact that it's not a set. I don't have a bunch of soundproofing. I may not use some of the equipment that some of the others use, but I make sure I have the best microphone that I can find, that I have the best webcam that I've been able to find, and I regularly check to see should I get anything else, and the answer is usually no, I'm good. My studio light, for instance, too, I've had the same studio light for years now, and again, I always keep track to say, all right, is something going to work? I've seen people say that I'm one of the YouTubers that doesn't use a ring light, and they find that odd because a lot of them use ring lights. It didn't work for me. The ring light, when I used it, it would just be right on the board, and I was like, I can't. And I didn't really like the ring light either. So while it is used by a lot of people in this sphere, I can't stand it. I do not enjoy the ring light at all. And also, I don't shoot videos using my phone. There's a lot less you're able to do with the video afterwards if you're using your phone than if you're using your laptop, at least the way I do it. But anyways, all videos are one take, including this one, of course. I do pause here and there, but it's during the same take. So you're not seeing different takes all spliced together, which again, I've stuck with from the beginning. That was just something that I felt like right in the beginning, okay, it's one take and then you're done. And a lot of my early videos were just 20, 25 minutes of me just talking hockey. Then I would lose track and I'd be like, oh, I forgot to talk about, and that's where the whiteboards came in. The whiteboards are so I don't forget things. So when I see people saying, I can't read the board, it's okay. The board, all those notes on the games, that's for me to remember what happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember. So it's right on the board there to go, all right, yeah, they had a really good first 5 minutes, then they had a rough next 5 minutes. Then there was the power plays, that threw things off, and then goals are scored, and that's where the turning point was. Rather than just the goals, because, again, when I just reported on here's who scored, here's what happened, there would be a lot of, I don't think he actually watched the games. So, all right, I'll take notes. But it has been very enjoyable to this point. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be enjoyable going forward. And I thank all of you for your support along the way. I'm excited for that first week of the season. And I'll throw this in there as well. As the year goes along, when we get into these really busy days, I will focus more on the teams that are in the playoffs, the games between teams that are playoff bound, than I will focus on teams that are out of the hunt. And that includes Vancouver. So when Vancouver is out of the playoff hunt, on the really busy nights, they will get less of my time and attention than other teams that are in the hunt, that are in a playoff spot, because, again, it feels like the most important games to cover are going to be the ones involving teams in the playoffs, teams in the hunt for the playoffs, and how their night went. So it kind of gets easier as the season goes along. That's where the 16-game night on that Tuesday early in the season is just brutal. But, again, it's something the NHL's doing. It feels like it's kind of gimmicky. That there was the rumor that they were going to try to have the longest continuous period of the sport being played that any sport has ever done, and that they would use the games in Europe to do that. I haven't seen that on the schedule, but that's kind of where I tapped out and said I don't think I could do that. So because there's a point where when you're watching all these games, especially if you're watching night after night, and it's just so much, it can kind of turn into white noise, and it kind of becomes a little bit harder to get into, especially emotionally. So yeah, it's about pacing and all that fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to this season. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of growth we see on the channel going forward. And I would like to thank people for comments, for likes, for all the engagement on the channel. Keep in mind that, anytime that you come across a channel, like, I really don't like this channel, comments on that channel still go towards the algorithm. Good comments, bad comments. It's sort of like I've mentioned that downvoting early. It does not affect a video. It did. Back when I started out, downvotes would affect a video's performance. It feels like YouTube took that out of the equation because there were people that were intentionally trying to downvote certain videos, like into the ground, so those videos wouldn't work anymore. So it feels like YouTube kind of messed around with a little bit, so they can't do that anymore. And of course, they try to hide the downvotes. It doesn't really matter. But at any rate, things have definitely changed. We haven't had an adpocalypse in a while, which I'm glad for. But hey, there's always that chance. There's always that time when it can happen again. And so I don't take anything for granted. Thank you guys so much for all your support. You have no idea how much that means to me that I can be here every day reporting on hockey for all you fine people on the internet. And so it doesn't bother me. And it doesn't bother me, pre-recording dozens of videos before we go on a vacation or holiday, so that they post to the channel, so that for people who count on that daily infusion of hockey information, hockey speculation, hockey jerseys, whatever you're looking for, I make sure I provide that content on a daily basis. So thank you guys so much for your support on the way to 290,000 subscribers. And here's to, that next 10,000 and seeing 300,000. It's an insane number. One way that I've used to sort of look at it to try to get in my brain how many people that is to compare it in terms of cities in Canada. And at 290,000 people, if I moved all my subscribers to one spot in Canada, we'd have a pretty big city. We might be able to look at an expansion team. Maybe I should call Gary. But anyways, that's the cart before the horse. That's like light years before the horse. But at any rate, light years is distance, not time. But yeah, anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much again for all your support. If you haven't already hit like and subscribe, go ahead and do so. Gets us that step closer. I remember the first time I did a video on Milestone. I think that was at 10,000. I think that was the first Milestone video. And that was well after Yvonne and I met. Just thinking back to when I decided, okay, YouTube's doing really well. I'm not going to have the full-time job. I'm going to go to a part-time job. That was terrifying. And then going into the playoffs in 2018, where I realized I have to quit the part-time job so that I can really dive into YouTube. And that was scary. It's still a scary experience when I really think about it. But I'd like to thank all you fine people on the internet for making sure that the fears and whatever negativity in the back of my mind of you can't do this is crazy, that voice got silenced pretty quickly, and it's been a lot of fun. So after, what is it now? We're looking at 8 years of me talking about hockey on the internet, a little like 8.5 years almost. But 8 years of me doing it full time. I'm looking forward to going into year number 9 and seeing who wins the Stanley Cup this year, how the draft turns out. One thing that I do love about hockey is it's a story that never ends. It doesn't. Even in the off season, it's still going. There's still stuff happening, and I'm always here to report on it. If I'm not here, I'm still somewhere near an internet connection to report on it. But anyways, thank you guys so much for all your support, and I will talk to you again soon.